I'd just like to make a very quick response on the last point that the member preceding me made, and to make it absolutely clear that not one extra job for Maori is created by transferring a taxpayer asset to Maori in the way that she is promoting. Not one extra job for anyone is created by transferring a state-owned enterprise or part of them to Maori. There will be no extra jobs in Mighty River Power, not one extra job in Mighty River Power by transferring ownership to Maori, as she has just advocated in the House. And I want to say to that member that the assets that have been built up in my grandparents' generation, in my parents' generation, and in my generation, that have been paid for by the taxpayers and have been paid for by the people who paid for the power, should not be hawked off, whether it is to Maori or to John Key's rich friends from offshore. I think it's wrong. It doesn't matter whether the member is prioritising Maori for the sale or prioritising John Key's mates at what used to be Merrill Lynch and is now the Bank of America. Mr. Speaker, those assets should stay in the hands of the government because they are the custodians of those assets for the people of the future. And what's more, Mr. Speaker, on average, those assets are returning 15% a year. The group of assets that has been proposed for sale. There's 15% a year, and what the Minister of Finance told us at the Select Committee at the time, and it might have changed slightly, but that he was borrowing on a short-term basis at about 3.5% per annum and on a 10-year basis at somewhere around the 6% figure. And I say, what sort of business person would sell an asset that is returning 2.5 times the amount that is coming, that is costing for that capital? Retiring debt at a loss seems to be one of the maddest approaches. And then the other interesting thing that we heard from Bill English, that he's worried about the risk. He's worried about the risk profile of the electricity companies in New Zealand. And I just want to say to him, what is the risk? What is the risk in the ownership? I can't think of a much better spread of portfolios. I can't think of a much better utility than that. And what Labour will do is Labour will protect those assets. They've been built up by past generations, and we want Kiwis to own the future. We don't want just wealthy Kiwis to buy the shares and then to sell them on offshore, as happened with Contact Energy. We do not want only the wealthy to buy them and to flick them off, sometimes at a profit, and to be fair to them, sometimes at a loss, to the current, as with Contact, to the overseen owners. Mr. Speaker, I just want to make another point, and that is there's been a lot of talk about New Zealand going forward under the National Party, but actually, sir, New Zealand has been going backward. I asked the question, and I give credit again to Cameron Slater because he's put it there. Just name me people who are better off under National.
John Key.
Well, John Key is better off under National. He's better off by $1,000 a week as a result of the tax cuts, by $100,000 a week as a result of the changes in net worth that John Key's had. And I just sort of say that I'm not surprised that he's a tad out of touch, because there are not many families in New Zealand who, after they've paid all their bills for the week, are $100,000 better off. And therefore I can understand how people do feel that the Prime Minister is slightly out of touch. Mr. Speaker, I should have started, and I will now make a comment on Canterbury. I haven't made a speech of this sort, a more general speech in the time. I think, like all of us, we are dismayed with the situation. Many of us are scared for the future of Christchurch. both in the social and economic sense and physically, because I'm one of those people who, it might be an old-fashioned belief, and it might be a myth, but these bad things often come in threes. And I am very, very anxious about that. And when, as recently as last night, there was a major earthquake, I understand only 2 kilometres down under the centre of Christchurch, only a 2.2, but when it's only 2k down, that must be causing enormous anxiety for the people of Christchurch. And I say, while I give a lot of credit to many of the people who have been involved, and people have been involved on a voluntary basis, I think there are still some questions around the organisation. I think the head of Civil Defence has made it clear that they have missed, as far as Christchurch East is concerned, that is not sorted. But I say also, sir, there are still some people who live on the other side of town that are waiting to be properly treated from September. And some of those people have been hit again. And I say, Mr Speaker, that the government just needs to keep on looking to its own organisation post this earthquake to make sure that is a step quite a long way further up from the previous occasion. And I just want to reiterate that there are some, as I did by way of question today to the Prime Minister, the government's going to have to decide pretty soon whether it's going to put resources into reconnecting the sewer system and the water into the areas which, as the Prime Minister has indicated, are in effect going to be bulldozed and turned into parks. And when there are scarce resources and when there are priorities that are to be set, there are some people in those areas, some people know they're in those areas, and unfortunately a lot of people think they're in those areas in Christchurch. And there needs to be some certainty as soon as possible, because clearly it would be foolish of those people to work on repairing their houses if in fact they're not going to get water back and the sewers are not going to work again. Mr Speaker, this Parliament is, however, I think on some normal actions. I think probably the decision of the government to proceed with the seabed and foreshore legislation has taken us out of the jolly families approach, the happy families approach that had occurred before. Mr Speaker, I do want to emphasise the importance that Labor puts on having a fair go, on having young people have a fair go. I think all of us know, Mr Speaker, of families where they have invested their money, where there have been student loans. They've done everything right. They've done what people have recommended to them. The kids have got their training, they've got their degrees, and if they're lucky, they've got jobs at McDonald's. And Mr Speaker, what I'm concerned about is, well before this earthquake, we were getting to the point where the skills of the country were not being used, and also, and I think very importantly, a lot of the skills that were in demand, and I give again the example of the building area, the trades training, the number of apprenticeships had been run down by the current government, the intakes into those courses, the number of apprenticeships had been deliberately run down by the previous government, and the numbers who were going into the pre-apprenticeship courses had been dropped as well. And Mr Speaker, we know that if we are not careful, we're going to have to be bringing people from overseas to do the work that is necessary in Christchurch. And Mr Speaker, my priority is for Kiwis, for them to have a fair go, for them to get the skills, for them to get the jobs, and for them to get ahead. The National Party, because it has no plan, it has no long-term plan, and it doesn't even have a decent short-term plan. It doesn't seem to have a plan beyond the plan for the next photo opportunity, Mr Speaker. We, Mr Speaker, want New Zealand to get ahead, and the National Party shows no sign of wanting to do that. Speaker.